We are here on mission, and our mission is to regain the Senate, maintain the House, and get Trump up out of here. Now, all of those three things need to happen, but if we get two of the three, we at least have some protection.
Yes.
And so if you're in the great state of Texas, I need you to show up. I need you to show up big time. This woman is running for the U.S. Senate. She's going against John Cornyn. This can happen, y'all. Let me welcome Amanda Edwards. Welcome to the Karen Hunter Show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
All right. Amanda for Texas is where you can follow her. Why do you want to be in the Senate? And what precipitated this move?
Yeah, I think, sometimes it's not about just being in the spaces and places where you're comfortable. I've been serving 2.3 million Texans as an at-large Houston City Council member for the last 4 years, just stepped down to run for this seat. But sometimes it's about being in the spaces where you're needed. And I don't know about you, if you watched what just happened with the impeachment proceedings or non-trial without evidence,
or witnesses. Yeah.
Right.
The fact of the matter is we need people who are going to take the role very seriously, who are going to be judicious, who are going to be diligent in their work, and not just allow politics to be the mainstay of the day. It has to be about people, and it has to be about justice and doing what's right. We have a constitution in this country, and no one should be above the constitution or the laws of this country, not even the president.
So this got you off your...
Well, not
doing
that.
your work.
That's just an illustration. But the truth
Right.
of the matter is we have a senator by the name of John Cornyn who's been serving in that seat since 2003, who has been actively engaging against the interests of Texans and people across this country. He's voted to overturn the Affordable Care Act at least half a dozen times because he doesn't like the name of the president that was in office when it was passed. That's called playing politics with people's lives. We can do better. We must do better because people's lives are depending on it. He's done many, many other things. I can just go down a very long list.
Yes, Jason, you'll get a chance in a second because he's a political scientist, so he knows way more than I do. But I'm just, I'm watching a lot of our Democratic candidates running to get rid of the guy that's in office instead of running to tell us what they're going to do. And I think that for me, I want to vote for somebody, not against somebody. So tell me what would Senator Edwards, what would that look like?
So, and what I share with everybody, and what's most important about any type of leader is their why. Why are they doing what they're doing? Then the what, the how, that falls into place. And for me, my why relates to really wanting to deliver real results from people. I've seen so many times where you hear on the campaign trail, people make promises that they don't keep. We have got to stop doing that. And I'll share with you a little bit of a personal story, if you will, that really brought that to light for me in terms of the fact that we have conditioned our people in our communities to expect to be exploited, to expect to just be relevant at campaign season, but not to have that same relevance or same respect and regard when it's time to deliver on those campaign promises. Back in 2017, when Hurricane Harvey happened, that was about 51 inches of rainfall that came across our community in the Gulf Coast. I got a phone call and asked me to check on some of our low-income seniors. I said, no problem. I can do that. And I went, popped up, checked on them, and they were happy to see me. And I'd ask them, well, what are you doing to clean out your house? And we'd have a conversation about it. And then I'd ask, what are you doing to get some of that furniture out of your house? Because they had been soiled, the furniture had been soiled by floodwater. And they'd say, well, I'm going to call my grandchild. I said, okay. Well, what about your walls? And because they too had been soiled by the floodwaters. And in house after house after house that I'd visit, they'd say the same thing, which was, well, those walls are already dry. And they'd say the same thing. And I was absolutely heartbroken because, as you might imagine,
the mold.
Exactly. And these
Toxic
are our
mold,
low-income seniors. So who's going to help them? And so I mobilized hundreds of volunteers, and we went door to door. We were checking on them, trying to get them connected to volunteers and nonprofit agencies that were helping do the wall removal. And so I was really proud of that work until I started stepping foot on those doorsteps. And the first thing that people would ask me was, oh, are you up for re-election? And that was the first question out of their mouths. And this was after the second worst disaster in U.S. history in terms of dollars and cents.
So is that the only reason why you were helping?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. And that was disturbing because we've conditioned people to believe that that's The only time that we should
being
be
a
there.
public servant.
That's right. I mean, be there to do my job. And so I want to see that paradigm shift. And it can shift if you get real servant leaders who are in the job to do the job, rather than just to be in the job to acquire more power. And there is something to be said about obviously wanting to be the party in majority. I certainly understand the significance of that in terms of being able to set an agenda. So I don't want you to think that I'm naive about that, but you got to be in there to do the work. You also have to be able to deliver on the things that we talk about. Every time we open our mouths and we say a bunch of things, people are listening. And if you're saying things and you're not delivering on those things, that's one less person who might be trusting of the democracy in which we live. And so when it comes down to that next election cycle, I'll give you the 18 cycle just to kind of give you some insight. When the 18 cycle happened, there was a guy named Beto who ran very successfully. He lost the race, but ran very successfully in terms of really showing and demonstrating that Texas was ripe for change now. And when he ran, he came within 215,000 votes of winning. But the way that he did it was in large part by getting a lot of what we call persuadable voters. Those are people who are in the middle and the suburbs, don't typically vote Democratic on a consistent basis. He got them in the fold. But what we also learned is that Beto did well with getting communities of colors to register to vote, but they didn't come back out and vote in those high numbers. They were under 50% of their registered numbers. The same held true for people under the age of 35. High registration levels, but under 50% of their registered numbers actually turned out and voted. And so the question becomes, well, what if you can galvanize those persuadable voters again? But also, what if you can build on that and bring those communities of color into the fold? Instead of it just being high registration, actually have that high turnout. And the same with the people who are 35 years old and younger. What if you could do all three and you have the votes you need to actually win? Well, who's going to be able to do that? And that question gets answered by this. It's got to be someone who first can acknowledge what's happening, which is exploitation. I mean, that's just me being truthful, right? Like we know how to find your house and we know your voting patterns. We know your name. We know you when it's election time, but we seem to suddenly forget who you are when it's time to deliver. And I think that's the paradigm that has to be fixed. And if you get somebody who has had the opposite experience, meaning for the communities that I've served, I've known their names. I know where they live. Well, outside of the context of an election, it's about the work that you do after the election. It's kind of like the wedding to the marriage, you know? So the wedding day
you're good
is
in a marriage.
You got to be good in the marriage, right? Or that's all for naught. You spend a whole lot of money.
Amanda Edwards is here. Amanda Edwards, she's running for the Senate against John Cornyn. Beto lost to Ted Cruz. We were all wondering why he wouldn't run again instead of running for president, but we don't care now because Amanda Edwards is here. Amanda for Texas. Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you. It's just a question.
You could have just jumped in.
I was
Jason
trying to be
Johnson's
polite.
here
I was trying to be polite,
Doctor.
Amanda. So this is the thing that I am curious about, and I'm sure the audience. If you're not from Texas, like people don't realize like what's actually happening there, the dynamics, because you guys you're only 9 seats short of taking over the House?
That's correct.
The State House?
People have no idea what is happening in Texas. Just to kind of give you some landscape information. Since the 2016 cycle, we've had over 2.6 million newly registered voters come online. Of that 2.6 million plus, about 1.6 million are people of color and or under the age of 25 years old. So if that's not a different and new electorate, I don't know what else is.
Right.
It's changing. The demographics of Texas are changing. But beyond that, and beyond just the demographic changes, people's political identification has changed. A lot of folks who would otherwise really be kind of the Bush moderate type Republican, they're identifying as independent. They don't like the brand that Trump has really placed on the party. They don't feel like they fit. They're more concerned about, more traditional conservative values like, the monetary side of things, not necessarily.
Tax cuts
Exactly. But the rest of it, not so much. So we found that a number of those people, after they switched and became independent, they also voted for Beto. Yeah. Right. A lot of them now, it's used to be the case where independents in Texas always voted Republican. That's no longer the case.
Well, I think Beto, though, was like Pete Buttigieg, the safe vote for a Republican. You know what I'm saying? Because he's still a white man.
Yeah.
And, but when we talk about Texas, Harris County.
Yeah, that's my home county.
Yes. It was 19 judges.
Yeah.
One passed away.
Yes.
Rest in power. 19 black women elected.
And that's why I'm saying, like, for people, I think people need to understand, like, what's happening. What's happening in Texas is what you see in North Carolina, what you see in Georgia. We have a bunch of people moving there, which is changing the overall political attitudes on the ground. When you start having people who are younger from different places and have different values and stuff like that, it opens the opportunity for other people to actually run. The other thing I'm curious about, and this was huge because this happened in 2018, obviously happens in 2016. What are you thinking about? What are you guys doing on the ground when it comes to voter protection? What are you guys doing on the? I mean, there were so many videos that came out of broken voting machines or this person's. I mean, I saw things on Twitter. It's like, I'm pressing this button, I'm trying to vote for Beto, and it's putting Ted Cruz, which is awful. I'm sure the machine screamed. I mean, what kinds of things are you guys doing on the ground to make sure that the shenanigans that affected the vote in 2018 aren't going to harm you when you run in 2020?
I think the heightened awareness among the masses is part responsible. I mean, what you have to be and make sure you're doing. When I say that is, if you don't even know that something that is happening is suspicious or should be reported, then how do you know how to appropriately respond? And so having that awareness, people telling those stories, irregularities being reported. We actually just started voting yesterday. So early voting started yesterday.
For the primary?
For the primary.
Which is on March 17th.
We're Super Tuesday.
Okay. No, March 3rd.
March 3rd. We are Super
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
This is important. This is important. Newsflash.
Yes. So we are Super Tuesday state. And so early voting is from the 18th until the 28th. And people have to make sure they're vigilant. I will tell you, though, it's interesting. People in Texas a lot of people in Texas haven't made up their mind on who they're voting for president, which is interesting.
They've made up their mind about the Senate.
They've made up their mind about the Senate, of course.
Because it's Amanda Edwards. What's your background? You Texas forever, generations?
So I grew up in Houston. My dad's side of the family is from Texas. His side of the family is actually from Texas, Lubbock area, and then my mom's side of the family is actually from Louisiana. So we've got kind of a Gulf Coast mix in there, and so I always kid. It's kind of like we like to eat barbecue. We can eat barbecue and we can eat gumbo.
It's not all of it's delicious.
It makes a tremendous amount of sense.
Yeah. That's right. Barbecue and gumbo. But in any event, we've been in Texas and I've been in Houston most of my adult life. I moved. I went to Atlanta. I went to Emory undergrad. Then I had a chance to work on the Hill in Washington, D.C. I worked for Congresswoman Jackson Lee. Okay. So I had a great opportunity to do that. And then, of course, I moved on to Boston, where I went to Harvard, and then New Orleans. After Katrina happened, I helped to assist with the recovery efforts there, and I clerked in federal court before coming back home to Houston. So Harris County, born and raised, which is the biggest Democratic voting county in the state. That's 25% of the Democratic block of votes.
Okay.
That's hometown. And I've been elected there and serving and effective. I think one of the things that I wanted to do with my service is to make it about service. So often you just see it be about politics. And I actually don't even like politics, to be honest with you, but I know how to maneuver through politics so that we can serve the people. That to me is the most deeply rewarding aspect.
I want to ask something about this because you mentioned before a lot of people haven't made up their mind, haven't made a decision one way or another. Not to put you on the spot or anything, but this is a real question that a lot of people are going through, right?
Yeah.
Which is, you get the nomination.
That's right.
You're up against Cornyn.
Cornyn.
I would say Cornyn. You're going against Cornyn.
Yeah.
And I've said this about Kelly running against McSally, whoever goes. Which of the people running for president right now would you want campaigning for you throughout Texas when you're the nominee?
Well, I would hope that we have, a multiplicity of whoever is the nominee. Obviously, the nominee needs to campaign and as a team. I mean, it's essentially, we'd like to look at it in isolation.
Whoever loses needs to be on the campaign trail just as vociferously.
It's a team. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So whatever coalition you were going to bring with you, bring them. And one thing I will say, in terms of what's important this election cycle, we've had a broad spectrum of presidential candidates run. I hope that they stay engaged because they had supporters. We do not want the phenomenon that happened in 2016 to ever happen again.
Come on.
I think it was over 25% of the supporters of those that were not of the nominee.
100 million people sat home. That's
we cannot. We cannot. We cannot.
We know that Bloomberg's going to put money in, even if
a
he
tremendous
loses.
amount of money.
And he's opening
already said
16 offices in Texas.
And
those
Fair
16
Fight's going to be there.
Fair Fight too?
Yeah, Fair Fight's going to be
there. So those offices will remain open regardless of whomever the nominee is. Those kinds of things are important because we need the infrastructure built. You know, John Cornyn has been sitting there. I mean, he has a primary, but he's sitting there and he's waiting to see who will be his challenger. I think a challenger
Harris
like
County's
me.
coming.
Harris County's coming. And so, people say, oh, she's a city council member. I'm like, yeah, but from the largest Democratic voting bloc in the state.
Catch this smoke. Let's go to the phones. 866-801-8255. We have Amanda Edwards, and you can go to Amanda for FOR Texas on the Twitters. Let's go to D in Texas. Welcome.
Hello, Karen Hunter. Hello, Miss Amanda Edwards. I just wanted to call in and say I voted early today, and I put my vote behind you. Because,
awesome.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to see you on the panel when you came to Frisco with Royce West and the other candidates, and that was very informative, and that's what won me over regarding your candidacy. So look forward to seeing you do great things in the future, and looking forward to you winning the nomination and just kicking John Cornyn's butt because he sucks. So everybody in Texas, go and vote now. Early voting has started. Me and my wife went today. I don't know who she voted for because we don't have those kind of discussions. But at the end of the day, I did vote for you, and we definitely need to get those folks out of northern Texas, Collin County, Denton County, Harris County that are not doing the job for our community. So
that is absolutely correct. And thank you for your support and keep spreading the word because we need people understanding that we can actually take this election. That's another thing that people don't know is they don't even understand John Cornyn, the sitting incumbent, he's vulnerable. He's been polling between 27% and like the mid 30s and never cracked 40%.
Yeah.
He can totally lose. And the reason is
he
because
will lose. How about that?
Yes,
he
when I beat him. But he's been polling that low this whole time. And the issue that people often confuse, they'll say, well, why didn't, Ted Cruz is easier to beat than John Cornyn. No. John Cornyn has what we call a soft base.
Yeah.
He does not have a strong base. Ted Cruz was always above 40% on his base. What people conflate is the fact that Ted Cruz is not likable and many people don't like him.
But the
that
people
has
who like him love him.
Right.
That's
exactly,
correct.
Like Trump.
Exactly. And that was the thing.
Correct.
A lot of us, we were talking about this in other states, that like the notion of what is vulnerable and what isn't is because people aren't paying attention.
Right.
Everybody hates Ted, right? But he also, you can't deny the fact that the guy was the only person still running against Trump at the end of 2016.
People forgot about that.
Yeah, he was the second leading delegate getter for the Republican Party. He did have people who were willing to throw money his way. Cornyn, nobody remembers him. He's the other guy he's the background character in an action movie, and you can take somebody like that out. Okay. You can take out extras.
All right, let's go to TJ in Texas. You're on with Amanda Edwards. Welcome.
Hey, what's up? Karen?
What's up with you?
And first of all, Jason Johnson. My last name is Johnson. I think we cousins. My family's from Virginia.
Highly likely.
So if the Bernie Bros come for you, I got your back.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
But Miss Amanda Edwards. First of all, I'm so happy. I'll be voting, and I was actually I volunteered for Beto's losing campaign. We were close, and that was because of Karen and Joe Madison. Joe Madison saying, what are you going to do about it? And Karen, that was the first time I ever volunteered for a campaign. But Miss Edwards, I know you have a chance of winning. I just have one question. Have you had any endorsements from like Trader Truth, Slim Thug? I know you're from Houston, but again, I got a lot of friends from Houston, and I know politically, Trader Truth, he has a pretty big platform, and Slim Thug, but that'll get them young folks out for you.
So if I'll let you in on a little secret. I went to high school with Paul Wall and Slim Thug.
Paul Wall. I just saw Paul Wall in a documentary that
Okay.
Quincy Jones's son did about health because he lost a gang of weight and he and his wife are eating healthier.
Yeah.
So Paul Wall.
Paul Wall is supporting. Slim Thug is supporting. Trey the Truth is supporting. DJ Mr. Rogers
She got
is
an
supporting.
underground railroad, y'all.
I got some support that people don't really know about. But yeah, and the truth is I'm from there and they've seen me work. You know, like I had met Trey before Hurricane Harvey, but Trey and I were out when the firefighters together when we were doing work. And so people seeing you actually work versus just come and take a photo op, I think that's important. And so a lot of the times, even though I went to high school with Slim Thug and Paul Wall, they've also been watching me work in terms of what they want to see out of their leadership.
I mean, Scarface, Brad Jordan.
Oh, yeah, he ran for city council.
Yes.
He sure did.
Made it.
Into the runoff.
Yes.
Yeah.
So clearly, listen,
Look,
you need to do this.
Look, Chance got involved in the Chicago mayor's race. I mean, like, rappers matter. All rap matters.
Wow.
When you're running for office.
All right, so you're going to stay in touch. You're going to call us on March 3rd. It's going to be busy.
You coming down for the
no, not coming down, but
what I will do, I will make sure, because I'll be doing election night coverage. I will make sure that we pay attention to your particular primary. That'll be one of the things I shout out.
When you do pay attention, you just have to remember to tell everybody about the David. I mean, this is David and Goliath. They don't see it. John Corner does not see this coming.
So let's not tell him.
Shh. Everybody just be quiet.
Come on, white allies.
We're with Andrew Gillum. He won that nomination. Nobody thought it was going to happen, so it can happen.
Yes. Yeah. This is wonderful. Thanks for coming in today.
You for having
Thank you.
Amanda Edwards. Amanda, FOR, Texas is early voting from now until the 28th.
That's correct.
Get out there, vote, pull a lever for her. Just like the census, check black. Pull a lever for her. I don't care who you are. We got to get a winning ticket going into the Senate. We need the Senate back, and I think she's going to do some work there. I think you're going to do some work.
Go to work.
Imagine that.
A person that actually is going to go in and do what they're supposed to do. No, she'll be the third black woman ever. Carolyn, I can name them. Carolyn Mosley Brown and Kamala Harris.
That's it.
Kamala Harris, and then it'll be
Mosley Brown only had one term.
She did, and it was a lot. But anyway, and Amanda Edwards. Let's do this. All right. Thank you for being here again.
Thank you for having me.